Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Let's just continue this quick rundown. What might happen in Egypt? One is Mubarak stays, the army remains loyal, a certain amount of repression takes place, the crowds disperse. Pretty much what happened in Iran in June, July 2009. Has the Egyptian government studied the methods used in Iran to disperse the attempted color revolution at that point? Well, if you get Mubarak in power, then again you're going to have stagnation. Now, we do have El-Baradei has returned. We know him as the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna during the Mad Dog Bush neocon Cheney regime here in the U.S. El-Baradei, from one point of view, is a person of some integrity. He had the guts to stand up to Bush, Cheney, and their thugs and was spied on, vilified, and so forth. On the other hand, I think it's extremely unlikely that El-Baradei would turn out to be the beneficiary of what's going on in Egypt. Now under house arrest, he could gain symbolic value, right? The NPR this morning trying to promote him to the Aung San Suu Kyi of Egypt. He's probably, he's a little bit better, a lot better than Aung San Suu Kyi, but again, I don't think he's going to be the one left standing at the end of this. Let's continue with our options. The Romanian solution. We have two possible Romanian solutions. Pardon me. And once again, the Romanian solution would be, for example, Ceausescu wanted to have his son Nicu become the leader in his stead. Now, that could be Mubarak abdicates in favor of his son Gamal. It behaves like a monarchy, even though formally speaking it's not. Mubarak might be able to abdicate in favor of his son Gamal, who would come in promising reforms. Would this be enough to quell the street? Not clear, one way or the other. Another possibility is that the entire Mubarak family is ejected. They go to Saudi Arabia or Switzerland or wherever one goes. And then you get somebody from the Mubarak entourage who becomes the caretaker, and then they have elections, I believe, in the autumn of this year. These two options, well, there they are. One would be the abdication, one would be the complete elimination of the Mubarak dynasty. The other one, though, which has to be borne in mind, suppose you have, under these depression conditions, with breakdowns in the supply of food and fuel, the collapse of the regime and the emergence of social chaos, that is to say, Egypt on the path to being a failed state. The largest organization in the country, other than the army, is the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, generally speaking, the facts on the Muslim Brotherhood are it's a creation of British intelligence in the 1920s, designed to counter and to undermine the forces of modernization, industry, science, technology, social reform in the country. And during the regime of Nasser in 1950s and 60s, when Nasser was about the best you were going to get in any Arab country at that time and had real achievements. Think of the Aswan High Dam, flood control, hydroelectric power, economic modernization in the face of bitter opposition from John Foster Dulles, the pro-Nazi. It was possible for the British to have an internal opposition against Nasser thanks to the presence of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, since then, the Muslim Brotherhood may not be solely devoted to the rejection of modern science, technology, industry, and social reform. It may have become factionalized to the point where they've learned some lessons. Maybe they've seen the lesson of Iran shutting down its nuclear program in 1978-79 and then having to make up for lost time later on in terms of building power reactors. I think that if you did get the collapse of the regime and social chaos followed by a seizure of power by the Muslim Brotherhood, you'd probably then have a counter coup by the army, quite possibly backed by the U.S. or maybe not, and that would then lead to a military rule, which would have certainly possibilities. Anyway, I don't think any of these alternatives is cut and dried. The general idea seems to be that the Egyptian regime will not be so easy to overthrow. It's more like Iran in 2009 than it's like someplace else. But that is simply wisdom that could go out the window within 6 to 12 hours. At the same time, you've also got Yemen, where significant ferment has emerged. Now, in Egypt, it's largely it starts off as the middle class, right? It starts off as the sons and daughters of doctors, lawyers, government officials who can't find jobs on their own, can't get married, can't find apartments, have no economic future, and they go into the streets. Now, in the last day or so, the Muslim Brotherhood has entered the fray, and they bring in some pretty big battalions. The government has countered that by bringing in the army, and since it's a conscript army, not a professional army, not like the U.S., it's not clear which way the army goes. It may also be that the violence of the mob and the demonstrators, the autocracy forces, is scary enough to the middle class that they will pull back. In other words, if it's Mubarak or chaos, Mubarak doesn't look quite as bad as he did the day before. Again, El-Baradei coming in from Vienna, sort of a globalized elitist in some ways, and that really points to the basic question. If you look at my article about Tunisia, recently posted on Tarpley.net, these governments have got to do something. The big issue is break with economic globalization, and that the problem with it is that the people who come out from the middle class, the sons and daughters of the doctors, lawyers, and government officials, believe in globalization. They believe in free trade. They believe in derivatives. They believe in speculation. They believe in the banking system. They don't like the subsidies, which provide a decent bread price and a decent cooking oil price and other benefits to the falachin, right, the various peasants and the working class of Egypt. So the inherent contradiction in this is it's a revolt by the privileged sons and daughters of the middle class under foreign auspices, with Twitter and the Internet playing a big role. What about those masses in Egypt, right? The people down at the bottom of the pile. These color revolutions offer them absolutely nothing. And then, of course, the idea is that if you do get a new military government in there, especially one installed with U.S. support, or Mubarak becomes more dependent on the U.S., or Gamal Mubarak becomes the head of it and dependent on U.S. support, won't they be more interested in exporting their problems by courting confrontation with someplace like Iran? Perfectly possible under these circumstances. And we'll be back in just a second on World Crisis Radio.